The Temple Institute presents Parshat Hashavua, the weekly Torah teaching by Rabbi Chaim Richman.
Shalom. Last week we read Parshat Yitro. The heavens opened up. All of Israel stood around Mount Sinai. We received the Torah. And this week in Parshat Mishpatim, we get down to the nitty-gritty, the translation of Hashem's will into all sorts of area of endeavor. The truth is, this week in Parshat Mishpatim, we are still standing around Mount Sinai. The Parsha opens with the words Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. These are the ordinances that you shall place before them. And our sages tell us this vav of Ve'ela comes to add that just as the Ten Commandments were given at Mount Sinai, the entire Torah was given at Mount Sinai, all of the details, every single specific aspect. So this week, as we read Parshat Mishpatim, we are still standing in awe and wrapped with the Shekhinah, standing at Mount Sinai, receiving all of the details of how to live a life that is pleasing to Hashem. There's a lot of laws here in this Parsha. There's all sorts of civil laws, what they call tort laws, things pertaining to damages, relationships, all sorts of things. It's been pointed out how amazing this is, how it shows that the Jewish religion isn't just something which is abstract or dealing only with raw spirituality, but it has to be translated into this world, and everything here is very practical and forms the basis of society. And that's all very, very true. When we realize that the main thing about Parshat Mishpatim is that we haven't left anywhere yet. We're still standing around Mount Sinai. And the Sinai revelation is considered to be so important for all time that it's one of the 6 things that we are commanded to constantly remember. Just to recall in our minds that there was a Sinai revelation, and to believe in our hearts that it happened historically, and how much more so on a deeper level we're taught that we were actually there also. This in itself is a positive precept, just to recall constantly the Sinai revelation. Never to forget. But the question is asked, if the temple is so important, why was the Torah not given in Jerusalem at the Temple Mount? People have been asking this question lately. Why was the Torah given in the middle of the desert at Mount Sinai? There's all sorts of beautiful lessons that are learned and things that are spoken about the significance of Mount Sinai, and many things that we can derive from the choice that the Holy One, blessed be He, made of Mount Sinai, that it's not the tallest of mountains, that it teaches us humility, and that the Torah can only be acquired by someone who makes himself akin to the circumstances of the desert, that you have to be ready to give up. All sorts of lessons, little kind of moral lessons are derived from the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But the truth is, it's a good question. The center of everything is the service in the Holy Temple. The sanctity of Mount Sinai was temporary. It would seem that it was transferred to the Holy Temple. And we are not even introduced to the concept of the Holy Temple, apparently, until Parshat Truma, where we are going to read in Exodus 25 and verse 8, "And they shall make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell amongst them." So, the temple, therefore, is seen by some as being another aspect of Torah, another aspect of Jewish life. It's another commandment, and we'll hear about it later, and it has its place. But after all, Mount Sinai, the great Mount Sinai. The truth is, this is not the case at all. But in fact, the holiness of Mount Sinai was on the level of the holiness of the Holy Temple, but more so, the framework, the groundwork, the introduction, the basic pattern of the Holy Temple was established now at Mount Sinai. And for all practical purposes, what happened at Mount Sinai, what's happening this week, when we're still standing there at Mount Sinai, that was the first experience of the service in the Holy Temple. And contemplating Parshat Yitro and Parshat Mishpatim, we can realize that many of the most basic, fundamental points of the service of the Holy Temple, the halachot, the laws pertaining to the Mikdash, actually have their source at Mount Sinai. And at the time of the Sinai revelation, when the Jewish people stood around Mount Sinai, they actually were standing in the Holy Temple, in a pattern similar to the way the nation stood at the holidays when they came to the pilgrimage. And we have to understand, it's something that we always repeat. But the Holy Temple is not just a building. It's not like, oh, this is the design of the Holy Temple, it has a sanctuary and has a certain form and it looks a certain way. The Holy Temple is a place chosen by Hashem, by the Holy One, blessed be He, to rest His Shekhinah in the world. And such a place, Mikdash, is the meeting point between the upper spiritual worlds, between the entire existence and this natural world. But at Mount Sinai, even before the Ten Commandments were uttered, the service of the Holy Temple was already established according to its criteria, according to its properties. It was already determined, for example, which people would be serving there. An altar was built, vessels were used, and most importantly, a korban, an offering, was brought. And this became the template of the Holy Temple. So we're not waiting until Exodus 25:8 to be introduced to the positive commandment of building the Holy Temple. If the purpose of the giving of the Torah, as exemplified by the concentration of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai, was to imbue every aspect of our lives with holiness and to strive for holiness, and indeed Parshat Mishpatim with all of the details of a society based on fulfilling the will of Hashem, shows us that we can bring holiness into everyday aspects of our lives. So too, the idea of the sacred space, of the sanctification of a place that is a concentration of godliness in this world, was already stressed to us at Mount Sinai. And that experience, indeed, was the formation of the temple service. And this is an amazing thought. And actually, when we realize that here in Parshat Mishpatim we have a concentration of the entire pattern of the Holy Temple service, then part of this Parsha is actually chapter 24, which seems to us to be extremely elusive, extremely mysterious, extremely esoteric, all of a sudden begins to make sense. And we read together chapter 24 in its entirety. It's so inexplicable. What's going on here? To Moshe he said, "Go up to Hashem, you, Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, and the 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall prostrate yourselves from a distance. And Moshe alone shall approach Hashem, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not go up with him." This already is the delineation of the levels of sanctity of the Holy Temple. In Jerusalem, we're going to have the camp of Israel, the Levitical camp, the camp of the Shekhinah. This is the exact pattern of the experience at Mount Sinai. Moshe came and told the people all the words of Hashem and all the ordinances, and the entire people responded with one voice, and they said, "All the words that Hashem has spoken, we will do." Moshe wrote all the words of Hashem. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent the youths of the children of Israel, and they brought up burnt offerings, and they slaughtered bulls to Hashem as feast peace offerings to Hashem. And now we have this very strange experience. Moshe took half the blood and placed it in basins, and half the blood he threw upon the altar. He took the book of the covenant and read it in earshot of the people. And they said, "Everything that Hashem has said, we will do and we will obey." And this is the important verse where that word was added. Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, first and foremost, we will do, and v'nishma, and we will, here translated as, and we will obey, and we will hear, and we will endeavor to understand. But first and foremost, we accept upon ourselves to do. And then Moshe took the blood and threw it upon the people. And he said, behold, the blood of the covenant that Hashem sealed with you concerning all these matters. So there is a powerful scene going on here. There is a covenant that is being made. A covenant is between two sides. There is a covenant here that is being entered into between Hashem and the people. This covenant is sealed with the blood of these offerings. Half of it is being put on the altar and half of it on the people themselves. When they responded, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will obey. This has tremendous implications throughout all the generations for the temple service itself, and we're going to be discussing this. Moshe, Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, the 70 of the elders of Israel, ascended. They saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was the likeness of sapphire brickwork. And it was like the essence of the heaven in purity. There are great secrets here. There are huge concepts here that we would need a tremendous amount of time to explore. What is the significance of this vision? But obviously, we're dealing here with an element of prophecy. Against the great men of the children of Israel, he did not stretch out his hand. They gazed at God, yet they ate and drank. We're dealing here with prophetic revelation. Aspects of the experience in the Holy Temple include the arrival and the placement of the entire nation of Israel within specific confines. It also includes the offerings. The temple is the place of the Sanhedrin. And here we see already Moshe, before he ascended, he specifically designated 70 of the elders of Israel. There is a prophetic revelation going on here also. The temple is the place of the revelation of prophecy. Hashem said to Moshe, ascend to me to the mountain and remain there, and I shall give you the stone tablets and the teaching and the commandment that I have written to teach them. Moshe stood up with Joshua, his servant, and Moshe ascended to the mountain of God. To the elders he said, wait for us here until we return to you. Behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a grievance should approach them. Again, this is the concept of coming to the Sanhedrin, all of Israel, with a question for guidance, for direction. Only Moshe himself ascended to the top of the mountain, the camp, as it were, of the Shekhinah, equivalent in the Holy Temple to the Holy of Holies. Moshe ascended the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of Hashem rested upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for a 6-day period. He called to Moshe on the 7th day from the midst of the cloud. The appearance of the glory of Hashem was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop before the eyes of the children of Israel. Moshe arrived in the midst of the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moshe was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. If we were to summarize the entire experience that we have been reading about, we could do so in the following manner. Moshe brings the response of the people to Hashem. He first teaches them the Mishpatim. He brings their response, which is everything that Hashem has commanded us we will do. Moshe writes the words which he received from Hashem. He gets up and he builds an altar at the base of the mountain, and then he establishes 12 pillars, monuments, opposite the 12 tribes of Israel. Then Moshe designates the firstborn of Israel to serve as the Kohanim, bringing an offer atop the altar. The firstborn of Israel indeed bring peace offerings and burnt offerings on top of this altar, and then Moshe places the blood from these offerings into basins. Half of this he dashes upon the altar. And then Moshe takes the book of the covenant, the words of Hashem, and reads it within the earshot of the people. Israel, again, receives this completely and commits themselves to fulfilling Hashem's words with the words, we shall do and we shall obey, Na'aseh v'nishma. And then Moshe dashes the blood of the covenant against the people and essentially states the words of the covenant, behold, this is the blood of the covenant which Hashem is making with you. And before he ascends to the mountain, again, he designates the 70 elders to sit at the foot of the mountain to judge the people. Israel is assembled and stands at attention at the base of the mountain in anticipation of the receiving of the Torah. Above them, the elders. Above them, the Kohanim, in this case, the firstborn, and above them, Aharon. And then Moshe, in the eyesight of all of Israel, ascends to the mountain, is covered over by the mountain, and the glory of Hashem dwells on Mount Sinai. And these steps are the preparation for the Sinai revelation. But every single aspect of this process has details that have far-reaching consequences for all the generations. Indeed, our sages derive that the prototype of the Korban Tamid, the daily offering, is the offering that was brought at Mount Sinai. Indeed, the verse in the book of Numbers 28:6 actually instructs us the Olat Tamid, the Tamid offering, which was accomplished, which was done at Mount Sinai. This is the style, the format of the Tamid offering, which is brought every day in the Holy Temple. So too, the requirement for the blood of the offering to be received in a vessel, just as it was done at Mount Sinai. And even more so, the significance of the blood that was dashed upon the people themselves. Every day, when the Korban Tamid is brought in the Holy Temple, its blood is dashed against the altar. Our sages tell us that this is actually a reminder of the covenants that we accepted upon ourselves at Mount Sinai with our words, Na'aseh v'nishma. In other words, a portion of the process of the offering in the Holy Temple every single day, the most important portion, the blood being placed upon the altar, is in itself a testimony to the ongoing perpetual covenant that we accept upon ourselves at Mount Sinai, that we will do and we will obey. In other words, the blood on the altar in the Holy Temple of the Tamid every single day, in the morning and in the evening, is a reminder that we promised Hashem that we will do and we will obey. And so many aspects of this an unbelievable, exquisitely beautiful circumstance of the Sinai revelation serve as the template and the prototype to everything that was to become the service in the Holy Temple. The Sanhedrin, which is placed in the Holy Temple, the revelation of prophecy, which is coming forth from the Holy of Holies, the camps for the nation, the Israelite camp, the Levitical camp, the place of the Shekhinah. All of these are derived actually from the Sinai experience. So, as opposed to the idea that later on, as another part of the mitzvot, we received this departmentalized compartment of Torah to build the Holy Temple. No. The Sinai experience itself was the beginning of the service in the Holy Temple, and everything that we are experiencing there at the feet of Mount Sinai, and the very reason why we are commanded by our sages to remember the Sinai experience is because this in itself is the more than the forerunner and more than the prototype. This is the beginning of the service of the Holy Temple. And indeed, we have, and there are so many more details that we can analyze regarding this whole experience, but there's a very beautiful midrash expressed by the holy Rabbi Akiva on the verse in Exodus 19 and verse 4, where Hashem says, "And I will bring you to me on eagle's wings, and I will bring you to me, Eli. I will bring you on eagle's wings, and I will bring you to me." So Rabbi Akiva explains, what does it mean, I will bring you on eagle's wings? That is a reference to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But what does it mean, I will bring you to me? That is a reference to the Beit HaBechira, the chosen house, the Holy Temple. And he explains that the entire purpose of the Sinai revelation was to bring us to build the Holy Temple. And indeed, the dynamic of the Sinai revelation in total is in itself a microcosm, an example, the beginning of the service of the Holy Temple. And there are so many people, unfortunately, who separate the idea of the Holy Temple from the rest of the mitzvot and from the rest of the Torah, and look upon the Holy Temple as being some either antiquated or perhaps eclectic or perhaps interesting side aspect of a Torah life. It's on hold, it's perhaps something that hopefully God will change his mind about, it's something completely different. But the Sinai revelation, the giving of the Torah, Parshat Mishpatim, it's so wonderful, look how upright we are, moral, just, we have civil laws, it's all great. This in itself, Parshat Mishpatim, is the greatest testimony to the vitality, to the vibrancy, to the continuity, the perpetuity of the service of the Holy Temple, which was the entire reason for the Exodus from Egypt and the entire reason we stood at Mount Sinai, to build the Holy Temple, to imbue every aspect of this world with an aspiration for godliness. And indeed, the Sinai experience and the receiving of the Torah is the groundwork for the building of the Holy Temple.
The Temple Institute's weekly Torah teaching is produced and copyrighted by the Temple Institute. These teachings are available on universaltorah.com in audio and video format. To learn more about the Temple Institute, please visit templeinstitute.org.